Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning out there in Blog Talk Radio land and all of our friends who still tune in over there at Radio Soul and iTunes and the different areas where you can check out Off the Shelf Book Talk Radio. I'm sitting here looking out the window, and it is another gorgeous weekend here in Atlanta, Georgia. So I want to welcome all of you, wherever you're located throughout the United States or from another country, tuning in this morning. We've had some awesome guests on Off the Shelf, and I get so excited because I always learn something from our guests. They always bless me. They always bless me. So I'm so excited about today's show. We have a fabulous author on deck for you guys, and I'm excited to introduce you to her in just a few moments. But again, I welcome you to Off the Shelf Book Talk Radio. You are listening to a winning book talk radio show on Blog Talk Radio, Off the Shelf. And there is still time for you to go tell your friends, book lovers, you can do them this good thing and encourage them to tune in to Off the Shelf, where, again, there's entertainment and education and information and insight, and you'll walk away glad you tuned in. You can let your friends know that there's still time this morning to check out Off the Shelf, and they can dial 347-994-3490. Again, that's 347-994-3490. You say, I don't want to dial. I don't want to dial in. You can search Denise Turney Off the Shelf. Boom, click on the link to the show, and you can tune in through the chat room. So there's several ways that you can catch Off the Shelf, but there's still time for you to tune in. Before we go into introducing today's guest, I started this again a little while ago, and I'd like to start with a thought that I just want to leave with you to think about. And today's thought is, if it is important to you, you will find a way. If not, you will find an excuse. If it is important to you, you will find a way. If not, you will find an excuse. So, listeners, as I say on Saturday mornings, how good of a mystery sleuth are you? When I was a kid, I would love to watch TV shows or read books, and I was a voracious book reader, and I wanted to figure out who did it before the author told me or before the television show or the movie revealed it. What's going to happen? I wanted to know before it was revealed. If you're like that, I think you will love Pour Over Me. But even more so, do you love and value relationships? Not only romantic relationships, because there is a memorable romantic relationship in Love Pour Over Me. And also, do you value relationships between families? There's a complicated father-son relationship in Love Pour Over Me. A lot of the readers start out absolutely hating the father in the book. But at the end, you can see how he shapes his son, and even the relationship his son goes in with Brenda, and what made the father the way he was, and how they impact each other. And maybe you don't hate the father so much at the end. He's been called a lot of bad names. But if you value family relationships and a special relationship between a man and a woman, and you want mystery, I encourage you to get a copy of Love Pour Over Me. If you don't see it on the store shelves, all you have to do is ask the clerk. It's in ebook and print format. You can get it at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, online, offline. Just ask the clerk, say, I'd like to get a copy of Love Pour Over Me by Denise Turney, and they can order it for you and let you know when it comes in because it's carried by the largest book distributors in the world. So I hope you'll go get a copy. Again, Love Pour Over Me by Denise Turney, and let me know how you enjoyed the book. And now let us go and meet today's special off-the-shelf guest. And our guest today is LaShonda Bowman. Now, LaShonda is the author of the new book. This is her latest. She's written several. Her new book is Nobody's Child, and it's an interesting title. It's scheduled for release this month. And other books that LaShonda Bowman has authored include My Soul is Satisfied, Then Sings My Soul, and He Restores My Soul. And you can keep up with LaShonda online at LaShondaBowman.com, and I'll spell that for you, LaShonda, and that's D as in David. So LaShonda, B as in boy, OWMAN.com. LaShondaBowman.com. This is a great thing about Off the Shelf Book Talk Radio. You can go over to her website right now. If you're near a laptop or you have your smartphone or some device you can get online, and explore, look at the covers of her books, read her bio, and explore what she has at her website, even as you enjoy today's interview. And I think there's something cool about online talk radio. So stay tuned to today's feature interview and learn more about her and her books and what inspires her as a writer, even as you're at her website. So welcome to Off the Shelf, LaShonda.
Hey, girlie, we got to rewind for a second, though, because, like, now you got me wanting to read Love Pour Over Me. I'm like, what? I was like, wait, what is this book? What you talking about? I'm writing down the title.
Oh, well, we are so happy to have you here with us. And you know what? We've had listeners. We're going into our 12th year, and I started this almost by accident. I was just trying to schedule an interview on a radio station, and the station owner said, why don't you start your own show? And I'm thinking, what? I got enough to do. But now going into 12 years, so that's how this happened. I have been blessed by every guest we've had on, and I know our listeners do as well. So I thank you for being here, and I'm excited to what you share intentionally and by accident. So we love to let our listeners know a little bit of backstory about our guests rather than just starting talking to them about their books like somebody visiting you. You want to get to know them a little bit. So before we start exploring your books and your writing process, LaShonda, would you please tell us where you grew up and what life was like for you growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in New Mexico, born and raised in the Black Church, Church of Christ. So it's an interesting dichotomy because, like I said, Church of God in Christ, for anyone not familiar, it is a traditionally black denomination. But New Mexico, especially when I was growing up, is predominantly white. So it's like, I'm a part of this community.
What? I thought just the opposite. I kid you not.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
It's like kind of like living two lives, right? Because it's just so separate. In school, I was always the only black girl, always. Sometimes in the entire school, not just the class. Then I go to, okay, let me just real quick say one thing. I am having some issues with allergies today.
You're fine.
I'm going to try so hard.
Don't you worry about that. We've had guests on that said, my voice. I'm like, yo, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm trying not to clear my throat and my cough and, oh, Lord. But anyway, so there was always that kind of two lives. And I was actually talking to a reader the other day, and I was like, this is actually the first time I feel like with these books, I'm getting to write about, like, myself and the people I grew up with and who I know, because even when I went to college, I was a theater major. So when my track was in acting, but I did a lot of playwriting, but our student body, there was, out of an entire theater department, there was 3 blacks. So I was never writing for myself. I was writing for the people we had there. So this has just been so great, not only to write about the people that I know growing up, and even hear just the voices. We talk different. We have a different cadence. It's just such a nice thing to do versus, I love writing, whatever the subject matter, but it really makes a difference getting to write about your own family and your own community.
So when you grew up, you said you from New Mexico. Did you have siblings? Did anybody did any of your siblings explore writing? Any of your parents? Where did that seed for writing come from? And I heard you say something about writing in the theater. Was that something you think was just innate, always there, or was there a teacher or someone who encouraged you or inspired you to pursue writing?
Oh, there was definitely a teacher. To this day, I love this woman to this day. Her name was Mrs. Longenbaugh. She was my first grade teacher. And like I said, I was always the only black kid, right? And then if that wasn't enough, I did pretty well in class. I'd always finish earlier. And I tended to be by myself. The area we grew up in, I don't know if I would necessarily call it the sticks, but it wasn't, we weren't in the suburbs. Okay. And the school that I went to, even though there wasn't a lot of minorities, we weren't necessarily academic. Well, I mean, it was a school, so obviously education was important, but it really wasn't pushed in the home. And so kind of being like the nerd in class on top of everything else wasn't great. But so I read a lot. Well, this teacher, I tore through because I finished work early. I tore through all the books, right, because we had like this little shelf. Like each class had their own kind of library besides the main library in the school. And after I did that, she went out and spent her own money to order Let the Circle Be Unbroken by Mildred Taylor.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even know there were books about black people, much less that they wrote them, you know. And so after that, I was just like, whoa. And that was the first time I thought about, maybe I can make up my own stories. I didn't start writing right then, but she was the first one that showed me that someone like me could do that.
Wow, isn't that something? I think that's great. We've had guests on who a teacher inspired them, or their mother kept reading to them, or a grandmother, and it just sparked that seed. And some started writing on a dare, like, you can't write a book. Yes, I can. And some of them got started. It's amazing how we do get our starts. Now, we want to talk about your books and your writing process and some other things on today's show, which it goes so fast. I rarely get to all the questions, but I want to start by asking you: is He Restores My Soul? Is this the first book in the series? And why did you? Okay, so this teacher inspired you to start writing, and you've written for theater, etc. Why did you decide to start with a series?
With this particular series?
A series altogether. Why would you? Why would you do as a?
The thing is, I actually had the idea for Nobody's Child a while back, but I did before indie publishing. I didn't know, because I knew that traditional publishing was not an easy road anyway, and I thought I didn't see in the Christian publishing industry, I didn't see a whole lot of African American authors, and so even though I had the idea, I didn't really do anything with it. Then indie publishing came along. And I was like, now wait. But at that point, the issue was I had never I've written some short stories, but for the most part, I've done like student short films. I've done plays. It's a completely different medium. I sat down and tried to write that novel. I was like, oh, no. Completely out of my depth. So I was like, you know what, I'm just, maybe novel writing is just not for me. So I pushed it away. A couple of years passed. And one of my sisters was like, why don't you start with novellas first? They're shorter, and maybe you won't be as intimidated. And so we bounced some ideas back and forth. I came up with the idea for that one. But by the time I finished writing it, she was like, okay, but what happens next? Like, well, do they ever come across Omar? What goes on? So I was like, So then I wrote the last scene in that. Went ahead and did the second one. When I was doing the second one, I started thinking about the last two books. I had considered making them one, but then what goes on to happen in the third, I was like, I don't know, that just might be too much So I just split them up, and that's why it's 3 novellas, because at the time, like I said, that was the least intimidating.
Oh, and that wasn't you didn't set out to do that, because some people set out to write a series because that's a good way to build a readership. You get the reader hooked with the first book, then they're like, oh, I got to know what happens to so-and-so, and then they get the second one, then they get the third one. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Can you give our listeners, LaShonda, our off-the-shelf listeners, a brief synopsis of He Restores My Soul?
It's basically about 3 sisters who were raised in church. They had since left, not necessarily, well, I'll leave that out because I don't know, people have different opinions, but they no longer are in the church. They come back to their hometown to attend their mother's funeral, and a lot of secrets that she had kept and that they had been keeping come out.
Can you introduce us? I have a cousin with this first name, actually, but can you introduce us, and I love this name, and I have to ask you if you thought about the poet when you named them, but can you introduce us to the Langston sisters?
I did think about the poet. I did. Absolutely. A lot of my names, this is the thing. A lot of the names, it's my way of, okay, for instance, I'm a huge, huge Mahalia Jackson fan. So I named their mother Mahalia. I get to the end of the book, and I'm like, this really didn't necessarily honor Sister Mahalia because of the kind of character she is. So then when I got to the last book, I had to put a little shout out to one of the songs that she did, just because I was like, oh man, this woman, I can't name her after one of my faves and leave it at that. So, but yeah, I definitely, because of the writer, and just I love the name. It's a great name. But the Langston sisters, okay, so we got the oldest one, who is Pamela. She's used to taking care of her sisters and kind of being in charge. And because of that, to the extent she's done it for so long and to such extremes, she has a tendency to try to handle her own situations instead of giving it over to God. That sometimes causes problems for her. Christina, like all 3 of them are dealing with some major stuff. They just do it in different ways. For Christina, it was substance abuse. And that kind of pull between how she was raised and what she's done since, and the struggle, well, does God love me? Can God love me? I don't even know if she wants to be loved, because that means letting somebody in and seeing those ugly parts she doesn't want to show. And then there's Tamia, who's the baby, and she's a sweetheart. She deals with a lot of anxiety, and that's something that I've dealt with. And so I knew her specifically, what that entailed. And she tends to build walls because it's something it's changed. But in the Black community, specifically in the Black church community, when I was coming up, we didn't talk about things like anxiety disorders or depression or anything like that. So that's it. That's the 3 sisters.
Now, how much older from the middle sister is the older sister? Is she like 2, 3? Are they close in age?
I think I put Pam is like 39, because the book, let's see, from book 1 to book 2, there's like a year difference, and then the other 2 are real close. So it's like the oldest one starts at like 39. Okay. And then Christina's 38, and then their youngest sister is 5 years younger than Pam, so I think she at that time is like 33. Yeah. Okay.
Now, when the middle sister, she's struggling, and we all, like my sister was saying, we all have our coping techniques, our coping skills. The middle sister, did she not start abusing substances after her mother passed, or was she doing this even while her mother was still here?
Just 1 minute.
Sure. And while we're waiting, I just let our listeners know we are honored to have LaShonda Bowman on Off the Shelf Book Talk Radio with us. It's coming up on that season change, and those allergies are messing with her a little bit. But we thank her for being here with her and her patience and her diligence and her grace. But she's the author of the new book, Nobody's Child, which is scheduled for release this month. So you guys can look for that. And also, she is the author of the books My Soul is Satisfied, Then Sings My Soul, and He Restores My Soul. And we're talking about the Langston sisters, and He Restores My Soul. And I wanted to ask you, so the middle sister, when did she start? Like, was her mother, after her mother passed, or while her mother was still here, where she started abusing stuff?
She started, well, first let me just say real quick, thank you so much for that little commercial break. That was so sweet.
Oh.
That was so sweet. Okay. She started pretty soon after once they all leave. They leave around 18, 19, the oldest two. Okay. After they all leave, she gets in, eventually they're out on their own, maybe 2 to 3 years after they leave, she gets her opportunity to get into the music industry. And it's shortly after that, because like I said, even before their mother died, that what they're dealing with, they look at it as, okay, she's gone, we can go home, bury her, and put all of this stuff behind us. And really, it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning.
Where did the concept, for off-the-shelf listeners who might be interested in starting writing, whether it's a novel, motion picture script, or theater, where did you get the concept? Because if people can't connect with and care about characters, they won't watch this TV show, they won't watch the movie, they won't read the book. They have to care about the characters. So where did the concepts for each of these sisters, their personalities, they're different, which I'm glad I asked you that, because they're different even though they're sisters. Where did you get the concept for their personalities from?
See, this was interesting because most times I would not be able to tell you, because by the time you get, by the time you get to the end of the book, the seed that started sometimes is so, it's evolved so much that you're like, oh, I don't even know where to start. But this specifically, I do know. I was watching Iyanla's Change My Life. Is that what Fixed My Life? The Pace Sisters were on there. I'm a fan of the Pace Sisters. I was watching it, and I just thought it was so interesting because, we see people all the time, whether they're celebrities in the secular world, celebrities in the gospel, Christian world, whatever. And we make assumptions, not necessarily good or bad ones, but you just make assumptions that, oh, yeah, she should be this kind of person, or she'd be that guy. We'd be cool. We could hang out, whatever. But it's like we really don't know anyone or what goes on in anyone's house. And I remember thinking that as I was watching it, and all of them, I think it was 5 sisters that were on there. Every single one of them dealt with what they had endured as children in a different way. And I thought how interesting, not only that their reactions were different, it affected them in different ways. And I don't know that anyone, well, I don't know because I didn't know them growing up, but anyone that maybe had attended the same church or anything like that, I don't know that anyone even knew what was going on in their house. And I found that interesting, so that's where that started. As far as the sisters, I just knew I needed, for the purpose of story, I needed certain archetypes. And so
interesting. Who, was that not Carl Jung? I forget who came up with that concept, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just knew I needed to have someone that, and it's just basically how life goes. If you have, I have 3 sisters of my own, so I know that you take on certain roles at certain times for certain reasons, and so I didn't see that it would be any different with them. So.
Okay. Now, how widely known or established is the Langston sisters' mother, Mahalia Langston, in the gospel music industry? Is she is she up there like with where Mahalia Jackson was? If somebody tried to imagine her, Tremaine Hawkins, Yolanda Adams, how widely established is their mother in the industry?
I would probably compare it to, now this is not who inspired me. This was no kind of connection. Please, all y'all listening, do not make any connection because there is none. I'm just trying to answer a question. But I would say that her place and her position in the gospel music community would have been similar to Mattie Moss Clark.
Okay.
The mother of the gospel singers, the Clark sisters. She was a minister of music in Church of God in Christ. She, worked with choirs all over. It might have been all over the world. I know definitely all over the country. She recorded albums, mentored a lot of musicians. There's a lot of R&B artists that have come out of the Black church that directly draw, they connect back to the Clark sisters, who in turn were taught by their mother. So as far as what she did musically, that's who I would compare her to. But again, I'm making no comparison to the one. I don't want anyone to misunderstand and think that there's no.
You're making me more and more interested in your story. Again, when you dive into characters, and the author knows their characters, you're talking about your characters, and you're making me feel like they're real people. And I've interviewed a lot of guests on the show, but when you really know your characters, I think that goes a long way. Now, is the Langston sisters, is their father active in their life? And their mother's a gospel singer, so I'm assuming she travels a lot. Does she take her daughters with her? Is she a very real presence in their life when they're little girls? And is their father active in their life?
Their father is not active. She's very active, but I don't want to talk too much about her relationship with them, because that is like the cornerstone in the story. As far as what you were saying earlier about knowing your characters, and this is one of the most common, and I'm so grateful for the readers that write to me and that message me on Facebook or leave comments. And the most common thing they always tell me is they seem so real. I actually found myself praying for them in their situation when I was away from the book, and I had to be like, wait a minute, they're not real. But I think as far as, and again, I'm talking to someone who already knows, the most important thing is your characters, because they have to care about them to keep reading.
Yes.
And they're not going to do that if they don't. And so unless they are, three-dimensional and all that other good stuff, it's not going to work.
Now, you said the father's not active.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you don't want to give too much of the story away. And the mother, but were the father and mother married? And how does she manage, Mahalia, to raise her daughters, be active in their lives, and maintain this gospel music career? How does she pull that off?
They were married, and there is a story behind that too. Which let me tell you this one thing. This is not what you asked, but this is very interesting to me, at least. When I wrote the first book, he was not. I knew that she had married him, and that he was gone. That's all that I knew. Whether she had died or just had left or what, I didn't really know too much. I didn't think I needed to. Then I get to the third book. And this is, as far as writing process, I don't know if you ever want to talk about that at all, but sometimes when I get stuck, I'll dictate instead of typing or writing by hand. And so I'm just talking out this thing. Next thing I know, man, we got not only the entire history of the Langston parents, but how it directly, that became like a major part of book 3, which that was one of the reasons 3 versus just 2, because there was so much behind that. And it's just interesting to me that sometimes it's almost like, I think, was it Michelangelo that was talking about he doesn't actually create a sculpture, he releases it from the stone. It kind of feels like that sometimes when you're writing. It feels like you're an archaeologist and you're like digging up these facts and histories instead of making them up. And I just thought about that because you brought up the dad, and I remember at the beginning not really giving him, to me it was always the sister story and their relationship with their mother and how that just literally colored their entire lives. Not realizing he was such a huge part. And it kind of happened for them, too, because they're thinking, oh, it's all about her and all this stuff. You get to book 3 and you're like, whoa. You find out all these issues and problems in book 1 stem back to him.
Wow.
And I just thought about that because you had brought that up.
Now, one reviewer said the book, He Restores My Soul, is a page-turner without being artificial. Now, I wanted to ask you, how are you able to build authenticity into your novels while sticking to Christian themes?
I don't know. When I'm writing, I'm not thinking about making it Christian. I'm not thinking about it. I know some people think you should go into a story with the same. I don't, because it's I don't know. I wouldn't know how to do that. But I just try to write a story that isn't boring, and then whatever happens afterwards. I mean, if I do anything intentionally, it would be, I guess, during the editing phase. I don't do a lot of changing from what I write down the first time to what you actually read, what I put up on Amazon. Very, very little. I would say maybe 10%. I don't. Maybe it's because I think about the story a lot before I write it. I don't know.
Okay.
It could be that.
Very interesting. And now, about 2 weeks after He Restores My Soul was released, you came out with Then Sings My Soul. I had got to ask you this. How in the world do you find the time to punch out a novel so quickly?
Okay, now wait. Let me say, this actually goes back to what you said at the beginning of the show, your thought for the day. When you talked about if you really want to do something, you'll do it. Well, first of all, I get up at 4 every morning to write.
Ooh.
Because I get up at 4 every morning to write. Now, I am not a typist. I have never been a typist, so a lot of times what I'll do is either I'll write by hand, usually not the full-out prose. What I do is kind of think about, I know I have to have certain things. There's certain things you have to do in a scene. You need to either positive and negative to positive. You need to have some kind of conflict. You need to have a goal, the motivation, all that stuff. So I work all that out in my mind, kind of put it out, decide what beats I want to hit. A lot of times I will dictate it because if I typed, like I know that's probably how most people do it, but if I had to type an entire novel, like the one I'm getting ready to put out is a little over 80,000 words. There's no way. That book wouldn't be published until like this fall, maybe, because I can't type. But so one of the things that I do as far as speed goes is that I dictate. Yeah. And I have to, if I'm going to publish at any sort of speed at all, I mean, not even rapid speed, because that was a unique case, those books coming out 2 weeks from each other, and we can talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to try to get something out like every 2 to 3 months. There's no way that'd happen if I didn't dictate, because besides writing, I also, at the moment, this is going to change soon, but at the moment I do my own editing and I do my covers. There's just no way,
Wow.
if I didn't dictate. So,
you know what?
There's that.
You are the first guest, I think, who said they do dictate. I know character sketches, outlines, journaling, different ways, or just writing anything every day to keep yourself going, and something can, a scene like you said with the father can just punch out of nowhere, out of your subconscious, because I think that's what we predominantly write with. But you're the first one who says they dictate. I can see already, I'm not going to get through all the questions, but I would definitely want to talk about Nobody's Child. But before that, could you introduce off-the-shelf listeners to some of the characters in Then Sings My Soul who are not in He Restores My Soul?
Okay, we have Omar Williams, who was the first love of one of the sisters, the Langston sisters. There's his friend, Brock, who is a mess. And there's Omar's ex-wife, Marissa. There's also his daughter. He has a little girl that's another one. Readers love little Chloe. They really love her. She doesn't say much. Doesn't say much. But
how old is she?
They love her. She's 5.
Oh,
5 or 6, something like that. She's 5 or 6. She actually, I have my niece, my baby niece, the youngest one, is 5. She's like my soulmate and my nemesis all at once. And Chloe actually, people assume, no. Unfortunately, Chloe and my niece are nothing alike. My niece is like, she's like Big Bang Theory of their early years. She's very, very smart, kind of suspicious. That also could be our fault. But Chloe's just such a sweetheart, and maybe that's why people love her so much. But, yeah, I think that's all the characters that are in this. Yeah, that's all the main characters that are in the second book that aren't in the first one.
And what's happening at the start of Then Sings My Soul?
The start of Then Sings My Soul opens a while after the end of the first one. And this is probably going to be somewhat of a plot spoiler, but Christina has recently come out of rehab, and she's starting to go on the first major tour she's been on in quite a while. And because of all the changes that have happened in her life, she's trying to maintain her privacy as she works through some of these things, and she's finding it difficult because at the same time there is one of the music networks has a reality TV camera crew following her, documenting the start of this tour. So, yeah.
Now, does the entire story take place in Atlanta? There is so much centered around Atlanta these days on TV, etc. But does the entire story take place in Atlanta, Georgia? And if not, where else? Where are some of the other locations that the story takes place in?
Book 1 is in Dallas, Texas. Book 2 is is in Atlanta. Book 3 is back in Dallas.
Oh, okay. When did Christina, how old was she when she decided to start following in her mother's footsteps as a gospel singer? I know you said she's coming out of rehab and then sings My Soul. But...
Well, she's a secular. She doesn't sing gospel. So she actually raised the girls to their mother. Pam describes her as... in the funeral in the first book, she describes her mother as Josephine Jackson because she's the female Joe Jackson. Because from the time they were small, she has been training them to be like these intense kind of rehearsals. She had expected them to follow in her footsteps. They didn't. They went, like I said, Christina goes out and ends up getting a record deal. Her sisters sing backup for her for quite a while. Pam eventually moves out of singing backup to becoming her manager. And, and if I was going to compare Christina to someone as far as her level of success, I would definitely put her Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, that kind of thing.
Oh, so she's really taken off. Yeah, privacy, I can see where that would be an issue. I can see that if she's got that much... she's out there in the public eye that much. In this second book, Then Sings My Soul, do the Langston sisters start to heal? Do they begin this healing process, this journey, after their mother has passed?
They actually started in book one. It's kind of like the entire series trilogy is about that, but it's kind of it. I would say the biggest breakthrough in book one comes for Christina, and then in book two, it's actually it's interesting because it's always about the sisters, and she grows even more and has more breakthroughs in two. But two, I think the major breakthroughs happen for Omar and the people that surround him. And then when you get to book three, Pam, who you think, Pam kind of got it together. And even when you find out some stuff that goes on with Pam in book one, you see she's come out of stuff, even some things that Christina didn't know about because Christina was, too high most of the time to know what was going on. But then you get to book three and you're like, oh, Pam still got some things that need to be worked out. And her and Tamia, I think it's more their story. I don't know. I'd have to ask someone that read it to see what they thought. But I kind of felt like it was more. She had her big breakthrough in one. They have theirs in three.
Now, are Christina and Omar, are they still a couple in the book My Soul is Satisfied? And if not, what's going on with Christina and Omar in My Soul is Satisfied?
Well, yeah, the two is primarily about them coming together. And three happens like literally the day after book two ends. So yeah, they're still together. They're dealing with the kind of things though that usually tear people apart. So and it's not like I said, two majors on their relationship. Three is not really, and this is another reason. I haven't really heard anything about it being a problem that it's three different shorter books. But I did see on Goodreads one person, she was like, I don't know, I wonder why she didn't just put them all together. I would have liked her to put them all together. I think once you read through all of them, some people may disagree, but I think once you get to three, you see, well, they do kind of focus on, if I'm like the book that I'm writing now, is focused on one character.
Okay.
Shifting my focus from, we're looking at about 6 different characters and getting a deep point of view on each one of them. That's just too much for one book, I think. And that's why, to me, it just seemed better to split those up. But, yeah, and I don't know if I even answered your question because I don't remember what it was.
No, I was asking if they were still a couple in My Soul is Satisfied, and you did answer. You said they are, but they're going through some things. They're facing some challenges that would break a lot of couples up. So saying that leads into my next question. Without giving the story away, what are some of the challenges that the Langston family is facing in the book My Soul is Satisfied?
A crisis of faith. Sometimes things happen, you're just like, whoa, why? And even what do we do? I think one of the major things is how far do we go in believing God? There's some people that would say, well, we'll believe God up until this point, and then, we need to figure it out for ourselves, or, I'm just going to trust Him all the way. The Word says what the Word says, and I'm going with that. And so it's kind of that back and forth, that question, how far does our faith go? How far can our faith go? That kind of thing. And also, and this is something that's in all 3 books, always the question of what can I expect? Like sometimes if you've gone through some stuff, now their lives are pretty extreme, but even small things, it's sometimes a person says, oh, I don't know, I'm overweight, guys don't look at a girl like me. Or, oh, I'm a recovering alcoholic, a woman wouldn't be interested in a man like me. And I think sometimes we cut ourselves off from the good things that God can bring to us because we ourselves feel like we don't deserve it. And so in different ways in all 3 books, that's explored. God, it's my belief from what I have read in the Bible, God wants more and better for us than we could even imagine. But not a lot of us believe that because it's not easy, especially, depending on the family you grew up in or sometimes even the doctrine you've been taught in church. you feel like, well, I don't deserve that, or God wouldn't do that for me. So.
Wow. So they're dealing with that. Now I have to ask you this, Christina. She's really gone big, and she's coming out of rehab. Is that, you would think, some people think, well, once I take the talent I was given and I use it and max it, I mean really use it, then I'll be satisfied. I'll be happy. Is Christina, once her career takes off, is that enough to satisfy her and she's got Omar, or is that still not enough?
Well, I think by the time we meet Christina, I mean, she's still a name. She's still famous, but there is that decline. You know, everybody, all the careers we've seen. Well, there's some people. We got some people like Miss Patty LaBelle going to be Patty LaBelle forever. You know, like, I don't know if there's
Aretha
ever going to be a
Franklin,
moment.
I mean,
right,
they're just
exactly.
Gonna be, yeah.
Yeah, but there are, most careers, you kind of get to that peak, and then it might be a slow fall. It might not. You know,
right.
But there's, she at one point says to someone, you know, there's more people that don't know me now than do, which that's a change, because there was a point in time where everybody knew who she was. You couldn't, you know, turn on your TV, listen to the radio, and not hear her. So I think that's part of the reason she's at the place where she really is open to these changes and to getting better and to doing better, because she's had all that. And she's not where she used to be, and she realizes, okay, it's not enough to satisfy me. It doesn't fulfill me. So now what? And with all the things that I've done at this point in my life, can I expect to have those things now?
You know, I have to ask you, though. I know I don't want to give too much of the story away, but Christina, when she was at the peak of her career, was she satisfied, or does she now say, I thought it would last forever? You know, we have things that happen and we think, I thought I would stay in that spot forever. And it could be like you said, it doesn't have to take fame. You could say, I thought my grandmother and my grandfather would be well and here forever. I thought I could always go visit them, or my aunt or my uncle, or whatever. My mom passed when I was real young, but some people, you just think, I thought this situation would always be this way. I thought my brothers and sisters would always be here and always be well. And then something happens and you're like, whoa, you see that everything in this world changes, and then that causes a shift. Does she feel satisfied at the peak of her career, and she's fine, and then she starts to look at things differently when it starts to drop off?
No, and actually I think it was the opposite. You saying, you know, you think it'll always be this way for Christina. And anyone that's read it will see the lives that they had. The way that she reacted to it, she had just gotten so used to it being so bad. She thought that's the way it would be forever. You know? And so even she never really knew happiness outside of the time she had with Omar. It really wasn't a reality in her life, and I don't think it's giving anything away to say she never was really at that point, at any point in her career, was like, oh, this is great. She was the kind of person that would go to bed at night thinking, okay, God, if I don't wake up in the morning, that's fine with me. She was the kind of person
even at
that
the height of her career.
She'd take a hit and think, okay, this might be the last time, and that was okay with her, because she just didn't see it changing. She didn't see it getting any better. And so it's so interesting that you said that, because that's how she is, only instead of things not being as good, it was more a matter of not seeing things getting any better.
Okay. Do any of the characters in the Langston book series that we just talked about, do any of them appear in your new book, Nobody's Child?
Yes. Now that was calculated. You were talking about earlier, like, what, you know, did you write it because then it made it serious, because it makes people want to read? Like I told you, I had thought of Nobody's Child first, but it was too intimidating because it was so long. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do these novellas, then I'd like to have Robin Jones, who is one of the main characters in Nobody's Child. I thought, well, I should put her in. Another one, she probably took up, her part got a little bigger than what I had initially intended. but it worked out because I think that it'll be easier for people to get into. Let me tell you about this Nobody's Child. This is the thing. Like I said, I'm used to writing. Girl, I am not used to the pacing. It's all of this is a learning experience for me. Again, something the pacing of a short story, a novella, and a novel, 3 different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. And the Langston books are like rapid fire, boom, 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 and then
right.
Whereas this one, it's slower, it unfolds more, and yeah, this was interesting.
This was a challenge, but that's good. That's good. And then you got stressed a little bit, and you stressed yourself, so that's good. Can you give our Off the Shelf listeners an overview of Nobody's Child?
Nobody's Child is about Michaela Dawson. She's a 19-year-old girl that decides she was abandoned as a baby. She wants to find her mother. She wants revenge, basically, because she feels like these things that happened to me wouldn't have happened had she not abandoned me. The problem is she sets this thing in motion, then she gets to know the woman, who in this case is Robin Jones, and realizes she's made a mistake. But by the time she realizes that, it's too late. The wheels are turning, things are happening, but that's just getting you to the middle of the book. A major thing happens in the middle that just flips everything on its head. And I'm not even talking about that because I don't want them to know. I want them to read it and be like, oh, what? So I'm not going to even go any further than that. I'm going to just leave it right there. Bam. Drop the mic.
So her mother abandons her when she's a baby. Is she an infant, and does her grandmother raise her, or an aunt? Who raises her?
She leaves her. Now look, you gotta make me tell stuff. Everybody's supposed
I don't. Just tell what you feel. She leaves her with Michaela is left with a friend, an old friend of her mother's grandmother. So while she knows her, she doesn't know. She knows just enough that she's able to tell Michaela just enough that Michaela can go and search this woman out. But then there's also this issue of, because she meets her and she turns out to be different than what she thought. She assumed she'd be a horrible person, and she's not that. But then she can't get past the fact that she knew where I was at this whole time. She knew where she left me. I didn't go anywhere. So why didn't she ever come back to me? So, but there's reasons. There's always reasons in my stories, and then you find them out, and you're like, oh, God. Now, what are you doing?
You know what I would eventually like to be? You know what I would eventually like to get? I would like to get as good a storyteller as, like, say, Shonda Rhimes. Because this is the thing coming out of Shondaland. Because, they market the whole thing as the OMG moment. Everyone always trying to make it sound like their stuff is going to stop you in their tracks, but she actually does it.
Wow.
So as I continue to become a better writer and storyteller, that's my goal. I don't mean just messy, but I mean tell the kind of stories that people have to go tell their friends about because they're like, girl. Yeah.
Wow. Now, what are you doing to get the word out about Nobody's Child? Here as we coming down to the last minutes of Off the Shelf for our listeners who might be writers and want to get some tips and some resources they can use to spread the word about their books, or there might be a small business owner. How do I get the word out? So what are some of the things that you're doing to start to spread the word about Nobody's Child?
I have not done anything to spread the word about Nobody's Child. I haven't done anything other than, I'm writing it. And I put it in the back of the other books that it's coming out, but I haven't.
That's a smart move. Yeah.
Yeah.
To give people a little teaser.
I put the cover. Yeah. There's an excerpt from it. There's, like I said, it hadn't even been finished written, so I had to come up with an excerpt and then description, and then on the Facebook page I put the cover for it. yeah, that's what I've done.
Yeah, and people say usually 6 months before the release, and you're pumping these books out fast, but to start to market it some kind of way to start to get the word out, whether it's if you have a newsletter or email blast, or start tweeting about it. Hey, guess what? So and so, look for this character. Boom, boom, boom.
No, those are all excellent ideas, which I will probably do the next time I write something. This book has been a problem child for reasons that we don't even got time to get into, but it's I haven't really done anything real. Like, if it was just me and you talking, girl, we could talk about this all day because you understand because you're a writer. But you know, I've been I haven't even posted on my Facebook page in like 2 weeks because I've just been writing this book.
Is there a character in the book that you think, because I heard Walter Mosley say this, and I said he is so right, and then I heard 2 other authors say it. Writing is predominantly subconscious. So is there a character you think is stirring something up in you which makes this book a challenge?
No, actually, no. The problem with this book is the same problem I had with the third Langston family book, which was that I did not outline. I have some romance writer friends that just told me it'd be so brilliant for me to learn to write by the seat of my pants because it's so free and it's so wonderful. And so I did it. And it just does not work for me. It's like trying to untangle a jewelry box full of chain necklaces, outline, and get my story in mind before I write it. Because then I have the emotional arcs out. I know where to put my twists, my surprises, the pacing, the feel of it, the way it moves. It's such a, like, you know, you feel it. It's like an intuitive type of thing for me as I'm doing the outline. So then when I'm actually writing it, I know where I'm at on the journey. When I do this by the seat of my pants, I have no clue what's going on.
Yeah,
so then even after, you know, it's just,
even if you do an outline, like for our listeners, you don't have to stick to it. It's like life. You set a goal, and you use the steps you're going to take to reach your goal, which probably will make it, I would say, more likely that you'll achieve the goal if you start doing those little small steps. But you also have to stay open to change. So even if you do the outline, some writers are like, because I didn't used to like to do an outline, but when I'm writing a novel now, I will start to at least write out, just very briefly, it could be just 2 short sentences, what's going to happen in the next scene. That is such a reliever for me to do that. Where's the next scene going? You can stay open even with an outline, but it's somewhat of a guide, you know, because our lives are so full and so busy. Rather than to sit down and wait for it, it's the subconscious to every time.
No, you just hit the nail on the head. Having an outline, in my case, actually frees me up to write the story because I know where it starts, I know where it ends, I know the emotional journey the characters have to take. Now, how they get there, I may not know that, but as long as I have the emotional journey and the emotional trajectory of the characters, then I'm okay. Not having an outline, I don't know. So I don't know. I'm like writing the scene, like I don't even know what she's feeling or where she at. Has she come to a decision? I don't. And that is just, I can't tell you how frustrating. Oh, my gosh. I told him, I said, I am never doing this again. I don't care what you all say. You do for you. I had this little cousin. She was sitting in church one day. She was just 3 years old, and she had a little purse. It was Easter Sunday, and she was chewing on the handle. And her godmother was like, girl, don't do that. And she looked at 3. She said, this is my purse. You do what you want with your purse. This is my purse. I feel like this is my book. I'll do what I want with my book. They do what they want. I outline. I'm an outliner, point blank, period. That's it.
Lesson learned. LaShonda, we thank you for being with us. That hour, I always tell our guests, it blows by. So we want to thank LaShonda Bollman for being here with us. We are at the top of the hour for being here with us on Off the Shelf Radio. LaShonda, please, I encourage you to support her. Her new book, Nobody's Child, which is scheduled for a March this month release, and her other books that are currently on the market that you can start reading and enjoying are My Soul is Satisfied, then sings my soul, and he restores my soul. And please visit her online at LaShondaBowman.com, LaShondaBowman.com. Again, that's LaShondaBowman.com. And please go get a copy of Love, my latest book, Love Pour Over Me, again by Denise Turney, ebook and print book format. We want to thank, again, LaShonda Bowman for being here with us, and I especially thank all of you, each of our off-the-shelf listeners. Please come back next Saturday where we will bring you another phenomenal guest. And if you are from New York City or you love New York City, you definitely going to want to tune in next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As I always tell you, remember, you are awesome. You are incredible. You are amazing. Go out and create a fabulous day for yourself. See you back here next Saturday at 11 a.m. Bye for now. LaShonda, I'll shoot you an email.
Okay.